Let's talk for a moment, a girl can dream, about Jeb Bush. When he was making the rounds here in New York City, bringing his tin can to all these Wall Street guys, everyone thought he's the guy to watch. He's the leader. What do you think about this reaction?
The normal physics of Republican nomination politics would say Jeb Bush should be leading this race and eventually winning it. Those focus groups that John Hamm and I did in Iowa and New Hampshire tell a much different story, matches up with the polls. Fierce resistance. They don't know much about him. What they know about him is he's a Bush. And while they like the Bush family in some ways, they say it's implausible to think that we want another Bush or the country wants another Bush. He knew from the beginning it was a huge obstacle. The donors like him. He's still raising the most money overall, but he has got a big problem.
Has he done anything wrong in the campaign, or is it just he can't beat the fundamentals of his name?
Well, both. He's certainly made mistakes, and there's a lot of second guessing. And what he's dealing with now, and after our focus group, he'll be dealing with more, is restive donors, right? They want a return on investment. They gave him the money because they said, this guy's going to be president. We want to be in on the ground floor. He's made mistakes. People are questioning whether he's trying to win in too many different states. Maybe he should focus on just one or two. They're questioning how he's dealt with Donald Trump, and they're questioning his message. He's now shifted to a message of, I'm an outsider, I can shake up Washington. It's going to be a hard sell with voters, again, because they just think of him as a Bush.
And there's some people occupying that territory, too. You've got Donald Trump, who's the ultimate
100%.
outsider.
100%.
You've got Ben Carson, who's an ultimate outsider. And it's really hard for him to say, oh, yeah, I'm an outsider, too.
Well,
even though my name is Bush.
Our focus group shows what the Bush people know, which is that is where the voters are right now. 50% of the vote or more, Trump, Carson, Fiorina. Can Jeb Bush outsider those three? It's going to be hard to do, but they realize the message of, I've been a governor, I've accomplished a lot. That's not where the electorate is right now.
But is his mistake being too cautious? When you think about why people like Donald Trump so much, it's that outspoken, leaning into it, punching back, and they just haven't heard from Jeb. So when you think mistake, is it really lack of action?
Well, look, they like Donald Trump for that, but our focus groups in both states also found they like Ben Carson, and he's not outspoken in terms of his style, but he is an outsider. So I think Jeb Bush is going to have to look inside himself. We've seen this look in the past. We've seen front runners. Yeah. We've seen front runners in both parties. John Kerry in 2004, who looked down and out. John McCain in 2008, who fought back. But this focus group says he's got a big fight.
If you had fewer candidates, if you had 5,
yeah.
Would it be a different story? I mean, I think part of the problem, it's very difficult to get any message across with 17 candidates.
It is. But now, look, we're down to 15, so the task becomes...
Isn't that not the same thing? That's kind of the point. 15, 17, 19, it's all the same. It's crazy.
This field was called the strongest Republican field in a generation. I said from the beginning, no, by a lot of pundits too, I said from the beginning, I think it's the most overrated field in a generation. Evidence of that, Scott Walker was considered one of the top prospects. Right. He was in the race for 70 days, and he's out. The good news for Jeb Bush is there's no establishment candidate who's caught on. Marco Rubio is rising. There's still plenty of time, plenty of room, but it's a daunting task. And as David, you suggested, what's his message? Is his message, I'm a better outsider than Donald Trump and Ben Carson? Or is his message, I'm a Bush, I know what I'm doing?
So this is my question. In some ways, Jeb Bush looks a lot like George W. Bush at this point.
Maybe because they're brothers.
No, but not just physically, Stephanie. That's a good point. Not just physically. But George W. Bush, as I had locked up all the money, the Wall Street money, things like that. He was the front runner. He'd been a governor.
But he also was ahead in the polls.
Well, but he came across as a true outsider. Now, is it just because we've had one too many Bushes, or is it because of the accent? Because George W. Bush talks different from Jeb Bush? What's the difference?
Well, I think there's two big differences. One is 2 Bushes versus 3 Bushes for voters is just a huge difference. It was a big difference for Barbara Bush, who at one time told NBC News, aren't there any other families in this country who can be president? And I think the other thing is his brother's legacy. As much as he defends his brother on some issues, people do not have the warmest memories about Bush 43's presidency.
All right, but they are heating up for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
What did your focus group tell you?
Mixed on Trump. They like him a lot. They accept his warts. They can talk chapter and verse in both states about what they don't like about Trump. A lot of things many people say they don't like about him. Too brash, too politically incorrect. But they say Washington has to change. We're sick of what's gone on. We can't have business as usual. So we'll take a guy who's outspoken if he'll change things.
John Mack, I want to put you on the spot.
Sure.
You know Donald Trump.
I do.
What do you think of him as a presidential candidate as opposed to a golfer?
I like Donald, and I don't want to comment on what I think.
Well, let me try more.
Are you surprised in any way that he's done so well in such a short time? Barry Diller earlier this week was aggressively going after Donald Trump, simply saying he's a bully.
And I'm not surprised. I mean, I think he's responding to what people want to hear, an outsider. He clearly is an outsider. He says what he thinks. He's a risk taker, and I think that appeals to people.
If that risk taker can execute.
If this primary eventually settles down to an outsider and an insider, which sitting politician is handling Donald Trump the best?
At this point, Marco Rubio, you could argue, is handling it best. John Kasich, interesting, right? Governor of Ohio, two-term governor. A lot of people in the press, a lot of Democrats are impressed with him. Republicans have not been yet. Trump has said nothing negative about John Kasich. In fact, yesterday in Iowa, he praised him pretty extensively.